For years, the enigmatic Severus Snape had been a constant thorn in Harry Potter's side, his hostility sharp, cruel, and unrelenting. To Harry, Snape's hatred seemed rooted in some inexplicable animosity, a disdain that stretched far beyond their roles as teacher and student. The worst of it was the fact that no matter what Harry did, whether he tried to be a good student or not, Snape seemed to always target him with a cold, harsh glare. Every word Snape spoke to him carried a venomous weight, and Harry was certain that no matter how hard he tried, he could never earn Snape's respect. But Harry had never fully understood the depths of that hatred. He had assumed it was born out of jealousy from Snape's bitterness about his father, James Potter, or perhaps his general distrust of Gryffindors. However, there was a deeper, darker reason, one that, had Harry known, would have changed everything about how he saw his most feared professor. One part narrative, the hidden connection. It was nearing the end of Harry's 5th year at Hogwarts, when the truth would finally come to light. The final confrontation with Lord Voldemort had not yet taken place, and yet the currents of the wizarding world were stirring in ways that Harry could not yet understand. The Order of the Phoenix was growing, and new alliances were forming in secret. Harry's world was filled with confusion, uncertainty, and the constant threat of danger. But what Harry could not yet know was that a moment of truth was coming, one that would change everything. The evening began like any other. Harry and his friends, Ron and Hermione, had been summoned to Professor Snape's office for an impromptu, private lesson on occlumency. It was a subject that Harry struggled with, one that he had been forced to learn after Voldemort had begun invading his mind. Snape, with his cold demeanor and harsh methods, had never been a comforting presence during these lessons. But tonight, something was different. There was an undercurrent to the atmosphere, something heavy and unsettling. As Harry sat across from Snape, trying to focus on the lesson at hand, he noticed that the professor was unusually silent, his usually harsh words and sharp commands absent. It was as if Snape was lost in thought, his eyes not quite meeting Harry's, his hands moving erratically, as if he was trying to steady himself against something invisible. "Professor?" Harry asked, his voice hesitant. He had never seen Snape like this before, as though some unseen weight was pressing down on him. Snape looked up sharply, his expression darkening as if he were ashamed to have been caught. For a moment, Harry could have sworn that there was something softer in his eyes, something buried deep beneath the layers of anger and resentment that Snape usually wore so well. "What is it, Potter?" Snape's voice was low, but the edge was gone. Harry hesitated, but the moment felt too fragile to ignore. He had spent years wondering what exactly it was that made Snape hate him so much, what he had done to deserve such venom. "Why do you hate me?" Harry asked bluntly, his tone sharper than he intended. The question hung in the air for a long moment, and Harry's heart pounded in his chest as Snape's eyes narrowed, as if contemplating whether to dismiss the question or answer it. But what Harry did not know was that Snape had never been able to answer that question. It was something he had buried in the depths of his heart for so long, an unspoken truth he had never wanted to confront. "I don't hate you, Potter," Snape replied quietly, though the bitterness remained in his voice. "I despise you because you are everything I was not. You remind me of a time I've long since buried, a time I regret." Harry was confused. He knew that Snape had always despised his father, James Potter, but this answer felt different. It was as though Snape was speaking of something deeper, something personal. Snape seemed to sense Harry's confusion and took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for something. He leaned forward, his black eyes boring into Harry's. For the first time, Harry could see something beneath the layers of spite and coldness, a rawness, a vulnerability that Snape had never shown before. "The truth, Potter," Snape began, slowly, "is that I see you, and I see him." "Who?" Harry asked, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. His father, James, was always the first person to come to mind, but Snape's tone suggested there was something more. Snape's lips tightened, and for a moment Harry thought he wouldn't continue, but then Snape sighed, his eyes briefly flicking to the floor as if searching for the right words. "You have no idea how much you are like your father. How much you remind me of the boy I used to be. The boy who thought he was invincible. The boy who dared to defy everything around him.